The Cover ship hung in low Earth orbit like a malignant tumor against the backdrop of stars. Its surface rippled with strange iridescence, an oil-slick sheen that defied the vacuum of space. Commander Jaron Taylor watched it through the observatory's telescope, his stomach clenching as he adjusted the focus. "How long have they been here?" he asked, not turning from the eyepiece. Dr. Marshall sighed, her voice betraying the fatigue of someone who hadn't slept in days. 17 hours, 13 minutes. They're maintaining position directly above the North American eastern seaboard. A holographic projection flickered to life on the wall, displaying data streams that scrolled too quickly for most eyes to follow. But Taylor had been augmented, modified in the early days of the Contact Initiative. His neural processors parsed the information instantly. They've ignored all communication attempts? All of them. 47 unique protocols across every conceivable wavelength and encoding schema. Marshall's voice cracked slightly. The president is preparing to address the nation in 2 hours, but frankly, we have nothing substantial to tell them. The room fell silent except for the soft hum of cooling systems that kept the quantum processors from overheating. Taylor moved away from the telescope and studied the vessel's schematics that they'd managed to compile. The Cover were known to humanity for precisely 4 months, since their scout ships had been detected at the edge of the solar system. Their technology was centuries beyond Earth's most advanced systems. Their biology completely alien. Silicon-based organisms that operated on principles that human science was still struggling to comprehend. "Something's happening," called out Lieutenant Wright from his monitoring station. "Energy spike? Massive." The holographic display shifted, showing a beam of coherent energy erupting from the ship's underbelly. It struck somewhere in the continental United States, the impact point glowing white-hot on their tactical display. "Location?" Taylor barked. "Eastern Montana." Wright replied, fingers flying across his interface. "Small town called Bridgewater. Population approximately 3,000. Taylor's communication implant chimed. He accepted the incoming data packet, and his augmented vision overlaid the footage being transmitted from Montana. A sphere of pulsing energy had enveloped the town's center. Inside it, frozen in time like insects in amber, were 10 women. They appeared suspended in the midst of ordinary activities, walking, shopping, talking. The sphere's surface rippled with the same oil-slick iridescence as the Kovar ship. "What are they doing?" Marshall whispered. Before anyone could respond, the sphere contracted violently. The women inside disintegrated, their bodies breaking down into component atoms with terrible precision. A collective gasp filled the command center. A voice boomed through every speaker, every device, every implant. "Humanity, we have studied your species. Your females produce your young. 10 have been harvested for analysis. Understand, this is mercy. You will provide 100 females within your next planetary rotation, or we will take them. Resistance is discouraged." The transmission ended, leaving a ringing silence. "They think they're being merciful," Taylor said quietly. His augmented hands had crushed the metal railing he'd been gripping. "They've studied us and still understand nothing." Across the globe, humanity watched the footage from Montana. The disintegration of 10 innocent women played on repeat across information networks. Governments convened emergency sessions. Military forces went to maximum readiness, despite knowing the futility of conventional weapons against the Kovar's technology. In a secure bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, Taylor sat before the assembled Joint Chiefs and the Secretary of Defense. The president's hologram flickered at the head of the table. "Our options are limited," General Westfield stated flatly. "We've run 800 simulations. Nuclear strikes might damage their vessel, but not before they could retaliate, and we'd be unleashing fallout in our own atmosphere. We can't give them what they want," said the Secretary of Defense. "Even if we were willing to sacrifice our own people, it would only be the beginning." Taylor leaned forward. "There's something else we need to consider. The Kovar chose women specifically. They referred to them as producers of young. This suggests a fundamental misunderstanding of human biology and social structure." "What's your point, Commander?" asked the President. "Their behavior displays a high level of technological advancement, but a critical failure in xenobiological and socio-cultural analysis. They're making assumptions based on incomplete data. Taylor pulled up his own display, showing the biological scans they'd managed to capture of the Kovar ship. We've detected only 8 individual Kovar aboard that vessel. Their species appears to have extreme sexual dimorphism. What we're seeing are likely the equivalent of their males specialized for exploration and conquest. And their females? Asked Westfield. Probably larger, possibly sessile, and almost certainly not present. This is a scouting party, not a colonization effort. Taylor's eyes narrowed. They're testing us, measuring our response. The president's hologram flickered as she considered this. What do you recommend, Commander? We need time. Dr. Abrams has been working on something at Quantum Dynamics. Project Loom. It's experimental, but it's our best shot. Taylor took a deep breath. We need to appear to comply while preparing our response. You want us to sacrifice 100 women? The Secretary of Defense looked appalled. No. I want us to send them what they're asking for, but not what they think they're asking for. Taylor's augmented eyes glinted. The Kovar have made a critical error in their assessment of humanity. They see us as simple biological organisms defined by reproductive roles. They don't understand what we really are. And what are we, Commander? Asked the President quietly. Taylor's face hardened. The most dangerous species in this galaxy. Not because of our technology, but because of what we do when cornered. They've taken 10 innocent lives, thinking it would cow us into submission. They fundamentally misunderstand what happens when humans witness cruelty against the defenseless. He stood up, projecting a series of technical specifications onto the central display. We have exactly 23 hours to implement Project Loom. I need full authorization and resources diverted immediately. What exactly does Project Loom do? General Westfield asked. It weaves quantum entanglement patterns between particles, Taylor explained. In theory, it could create a feedback loop in their teleportation technology. They'll take what they think are human women, but they'll be taking something else entirely. And if it fails? The president's voice was solemn. Taylor's gaze didn't waver. Then I personally volunteer to deliver the message to the Kovar that they've made the last mistake their species will ever make. Aboard the Kovar vessel, Dominance Commander Zeth Thal reviewed the planetary scans with satisfaction. The primitive carbon-based life forms below had reacted precisely as predicted. Fear, confusion, ineffectual military posturing. Their information networks buzzed with panic and despair. The harvest site has been prepared, reported Sub-Commander Vethrek. The specimens will be analyzed thoroughly before we signal the brood fleet. These creatures are remarkably primitive. Sebel noted, his translucent appendages manipulating the holographic displays. Their civilization has barely achieved rudimentary space travel. Their weapons are chemical and atomic, nothing that poses any threat to us. Yet they have spread across their planet with remarkable efficiency, observed Dirk. Their reproductive rate is concerning, hence our intervention, Zidfau replied. The brood mother will find this world suitable for conversion once we understand their biological parameters. The specimens we've requested will provide sufficient genetic material. A notification pulsed on their sensory array. Earth's primitive communications had activated again. They are transmitting a response. Fieldrek announced. They claim they will comply with our request. 100 females will be gathered at the original harvest site. Zit Veal's sensory appendages rippled with pleasure. As expected, primitive species always sacrifice the few to preserve the many. They lack the unified consciousness of superior life forms. Something is unusual about the data patterns emerging from their global network, Vethrek noted, focusing his sensory receptors on the information streams. There is increased activity in their military and scientific installations. Irrelevant, Seedbell dismissed. Prepare the molecular disassemblers. We will harvest the specimens at the appointed time. But deep in the ship's quantum processors, an anomaly appeared, too subtle for the Kovar to detect. A pattern in Earth's electromagnetic emissions had changed. Where there had been chaos and panic, something new had emerged. A coordinated pulse, precise and deliberate, like a heartbeat growing stronger. The humans were not running. They were not cowering. They were synchronizing. And as the Kovar ship prepared to harvest its next batch of specimens, the first tendrils of Project Loom silently reached out across the quantum foam, seeking connection with the alien technology. Far below in the designated harvest zone, 100 figures waited, not with fear but with purpose. Commander Taylor stood among them, His augmented systems interfaced directly with Project Loom. His final words before deployment echoed among all who heard them. They think they know what humanity is. They're about to learn what humanity becomes when the innocent are threatened. There is no force in this universe more dangerous than a species with nothing left to lose. The molecular disassemblers hummed to life aboard the Kovar vessel. Zidaval observed the gathering below with detached interest. 100 human figures stood in precise formation at the designated harvest site. Exactly as demanded. Their compliance was expected, inevitable. Lesser species always sacrificed the few to preserve the many. Begin extraction sequence. Zethvil commanded. Energy cascaded from the ship, enveloping the harvest zone in the familiar iridescent sphere. The Kovar sensory arrays recorded every detail: heart rates, neural activity, molecular composition. Oddly, the specimens showed minimal fear response. Curious but irrelevant. Molecular pattern secured, Vielarek reported. Commencing disassembly? The sphere contracted, but instead of the expected dissolution of matter, something unprecedented occurred. The quantum field inverter over-engineered specifically for this operation distorted. The sphere's surface rippled chaotically, energy patterns fragmenting into contradictory signals. Anomaly detected in the extraction field. Eth's Rek announced, his appendages fluttering with sudden concern. The specimens are resisting molecular deconstruction. Impossible, Zoth dismissed. Increase power to the disassembler. Below, Commander Taylor stood immobile within the extraction field, his augmented systems interfacing directly with Project Loom. His consciousness expanded beyond his physical form, riding the quantum entanglement that Dr. Abrams had woven between every person in the formation. Now, he subvocalized. Each of the 100 figures activated the quantum resonators implanted hours earlier. None were ordinary civilians. All were military personnel with extensive augmentations, volunteers who understood the risk. Their implants generated a cascading wave of entangled particles, precisely calibrated to the Kovar's technology. In the secure bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Abrams watched the data streams with intense focus. Her hands trembled slightly as she made microscopic adjustments to the quantum field manipulators. Project Loom is operational, she reported. Quantum entanglement established between our personnel and the Kovar's molecular disassemblers. General Westfield leaned forward. In English, Doctor, they're trying to take apart our people, atom by atom. Abrams explained, not looking away from her displays. But we've linked those atoms to their own technology. They can't disassemble our people without disassembling their own systems. Like trying to lift yourself by your own bootstraps, the Secretary of Defense murmured. More like trying to digest something that's simultaneously digesting you, Abrams corrected. And we're not done yet. On her primary screen, the quantum entanglement patterns pulsed in complex hypnotic configurations. Phase 1 had succeeded. The trap was set. Now came Phase 2. Initiating quantum feedback loop, she announced, activating a sequence that had been theoretical until today. Commander Taylor, you are authorized to proceed. Aboard the Kovar vessel, alarms blared as systems began failing in cascading sequence. The extraction field is collapsing, Vifrek reported urgently. Energy patterns are reflecting back into our systems. Impossible, Sithal repeated, but with less certainty. These primitives cannot comprehend our technology, let alone counteract it. The specimens are showing unusual neural patterns, another sub-commander reported. They appear to be synchronized. On the view screen, the 100 human figures remained motionless within the faltering extraction field. Their vital signs pulsed in perfect unison, 100 hearts beating as one, 100 minds somehow operating in concert. Terminate the extraction, Zethval ordered. Sever the connection immediately. Unable to comply, Varric responded, genuine alarm in his voice. The connection has become self-sustaining. Our systems cannot distinguish between the extraction field and our own operational matrix. For the first time in his extensive military career, ZDFL felt something approximating uncertainty. He activated the emergency protocols, attempting to isolate the ship's critical systems from the contamination. Below, Commander Taylor smiled. The quantum entanglement is spreading throughout their systems. Dr. Abrams reported, her voice tight with controlled excitement. Their technology operates on principles similar to our quantum computers, but vastly more advanced. They've never encountered a deliberate feedback loop before. The president's hologram leaned forward. What exactly is happening to their ship? Think of it like a computer virus. Madam President. But at the quantum level, Abrams explained. Every system on their vessel that interfaces with the extraction technology is becoming entangled with our quantum network. They can't distinguish their processes from ours anymore. General Westfield's eyes narrowed. Can they fire weapons? Uncertain, Abrams admitted. But any energy discharge would accelerate the entanglement. The more they fight, the faster they become part of our network. On the primary display, the Kovar ship's energy signature flickered erratically. Commencing Phase 3, Abrams announced, nodding to her team. Let's show them what humanity really is. The extraction field above Montana shimmered, then transformed. Instead of contracting, it expanded, crawling up the energy beam toward the Kovar vessel like a living thing. Within it, the 100 human figures remained perfectly still, their augmented bodies serving as conduits for Project Loom. Inside the Kovar ship, chaos erupted as systems failed in sequence. Zeithfall watched in disbelief as the ship's defensive measures activated automatically, firing energy weapons into Earth's atmosphere, only for the discharges to curve impossibly back toward the vessel, drawn into the growing quantum distortion. What are they doing? Zethfeld demanded, his composure fracturing. How is this possible? Vyric's appendages trembled as he analyzed the incoming data. The primitives have created a quantum resonance cascade. Their technology is primitive yet innovative in ways we never anticipated. Explain, Zethfeld commanded. They're not fighting our technology. Vyric said slowly, comprehension dawning. They're adapting to it, incorporating it, redirecting it. The specimens below, they are not ordinary females. They are not females at all. They are augmented warriors. On the view screen, the quantum resonance crawled ever closer to the ship. The harvest had been a trap meticulously planned and executed with a precision the Kovar had believed beyond human capability. Zeithfel's sensory appendages rippled with the first sensation of genuine alarm. Prepare emergency propulsion. We must distance ourselves from this primitive world immediately. Propulsion systems are non-responsive, Vyric reported. All primary systems are being subsumed by the quantum resonance. We are being consumed by their technology. In the extraction zone, Commander Taylor stood at the center of the formation, his augmented consciousness expanded beyond normal human limits. Through Project Loom, he perceived the Kovar vessel not as a distant object, but as an extension of the quantum network they had created. They're attempting to break orbit, he reported, his voice eerily calm, redirecting their energy output. Around him, the 99 other augmented soldiers maintained their positions, each one a node in the quantum web that now ensnared the alien vessel. Many were experiencing pain as their implants operated beyond designed parameters, but none wavered. Dr. Abrams' voice came through Taylor's neural link. We've achieved 87% integration with their primary systems. Quantum entanglement is approaching critical threshold. Commander, prepare for Phase 4. Taylor nodded, though no one physically present could see the gesture. His consciousness stretched further, following the quantum pathways that now connected human and Kovar technology. For the first time, he could perceive the alien minds aboard the vessel. Their confusion, their growing fear. They're trying to send a distress signal, Taylor reported. Blocking transmission now. Through the quantum link, he redirected the communication attempt, absorbing the complex data patterns. What he found sent a chill through him. Dr. Abrams, I'm sending you their stellar coordinates and communication protocols. There's a larger fleet awaiting their signal. We need to prepare. Zethal stared at the view screen in disbelief, as the ship's exterior began to glow with the same iridescent pattern as the extraction field. The quantum resonance had reached them, penetrating the vessel's supposedly impenetrable shields. The humans are accessing our database, Derek reported, his voice hollow with shock. They're extracting information about the brood fleet. How? Zeithal demanded. How can primitives who have barely achieved spaceflight penetrate our quantum-secured systems? The answer materialized on the view screen. A human face, Commander Taylor's, appeared before them, his eyes glowing with an unnatural light. You misunderstood us. Taylor's voice echoed through the ship's communication systems. You saw our biological differences and assumed they defined us. You saw our technological limitations and assumed we were primitive. The image shifted, showing the 10 women who had been disintegrated in Bridgewater, their faces serene in their final moments. These were not merely females as you categorized them, Taylor continued. They were doctors, engineers, parents, leaders. Each one contained a universe of knowledge and potential. Each one was connected to hundreds of others through bonds you cannot comprehend. Zethel's appendages contracted in what might have been the Kovar equivalent of a grimace. "What do you want, human?" "Understanding," Taylor replied simply. "We now have access to your neural patterns, your biological structure, your technology. We could disintegrate you as you did our people. Instead, we offer an alternative." The view screen shifted again, showing the quantum resonance patterns that now linked human and Kovar technology. The patterns pulsed hypnotically, revealing the elegant simplicity of Project Loom. "Your species evolved to view the universe through domination," Taylor continued. "Ours evolved to view it through connection. Your technology is based on deconstruction. Ours is based on integration." Zethel felt something unfamiliar creeping through his neural pathways. A foreign sensation that took moments to identify: fear. Not the tactical awareness of danger, but primal existential fear. "You have two options," Taylor said. "Allow us to establish a permanent quantum link with your brood fleet, opening diplomatic channels that cannot be violated, or," he paused, his eyes flaring brighter, "or discover what happens when a species that has spent its entire history adapting to threats decides you are an existential danger." The quantum resonance intensified, and for a brief moment, Zethal experienced something no Kovar had ever known. He perceived the world through human consciousness. The complexity overwhelmed him. The tangled web of emotions, memories, connections that defined humanity. Not simple biological imperatives, but something far more intricate and powerful. He saw flashes of human history, endless adaptation, survival against overwhelming odds, innovation born of desperation. He saw their wars, their resilience, their unfathomable ability to unite against external threats. When the connection severed, Zotval trembled visibly. "Commander," he addressed Taylor, using the human's title for the first time, "we have significantly miscalculated." "Yes," Taylor agreed simply. "You have." The quantum resonance wrapped completely around the Kovar vessel now, transforming it into a node in humanity's network. Below, in military installations across the globe, human scientists began decoding the vast repository of alien knowledge flowing through the connection. "What happens now?" Seville asked, his voice betraying uncertainty. An emotion no Kovar commander had ever displayed to an inferior species. Taylor's expression remained impassive. "Now you will witness what happens when humanity unites against a common enemy. Your brood fleet is approaching, expecting to find a conquered world ready for harvest. Instead, they'll find a species that has integrated your technology with ours, creating something neither of us could have developed alone." The quantum link pulsed, and for the first time in the history of their species, the Kovar experienced genuine existential fear of an opponent they had gravely, catastrophically underestimated. 3 days after the quantum entanglement of the Kovar scout ship, the brood fleet arrived at the edge of the solar system. 7 massive vessels, each 20 times larger than the scout, decelerated from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. Their hulls rippled with the same iridescent patterns as their trapped advanced ship, distorting the starlight around them like reality itself was being warped. In the command center beneath the Rocky Mountains, Dr. Abrams monitored the quantum network that now extended throughout Earth's infrastructure. Project Loom had evolved beyond its original parameters, integrating fragments of Kovar technology that accelerated human understanding by decades with each passing hour. "The brood fleet has established high orbit around Jupiter," she reported. "They're maintaining position, likely assessing the situation with their scout ship." Commander Taylor nodded, his augmented consciousness still partially immersed in the quantum network. Through it, he maintained constant surveillance of the captured Kovar vessel and its increasingly agitated crew. "They've attempted to contact their fleet 17 times, he stated. "Each time we've intercepted and analyzed their communications." President Harlow's hologram regarded the tactical display gravely. "Can we maintain control of their scout ship when the fleet arrives?" Dr. Abrams hesitated. "The quantum entanglement is stable. What we've never tested it against multiple Kovar vessels. Their combined processing power could potentially overwhelm our network. Then we need to act before they reach Earth," General Westfield stated. "What are our options?" Taylor's eyes glowed faintly, a side effect of his prolonged connection to the quantum network. "We've decoded enough of their technology to understand their propulsion systems, weapons capabilities, and communication protocols. But more importantly, we've gained insight into their social structure. He gestured, and the tactical display shifted to show a complex hierarchical diagram. The Kovar operate as a hive mind species, but not in the way we initially thought. The vessels approaching aren't just ships, they're extensions of the Broodmother, a singular consciousness that coordinates their entire civilization. You're saying these ships are like limbs of a larger organism? The Secretary of Defense asked. More like semi-autonomous drones, Taylor corrected. They operate independently until integration with the collective becomes necessary. The scout ship we captured was expected to integrate its experiences, including the harvesting of our women, back into the collective upon the fleet's arrival. Dr. Abrams smiled thinly. Which gives us our opportunity. Aboard the captured scout ship, Sethfall had abandoned dignity. The commander's appendages trembled continuously as the quantum entanglement penetrated deeper into the vessel's systems, and by extension into the Kovar's own biology. The silicon-based life forms had evolved in symbiosis with their technology. Their neural pathways directly interfaced with their ship's operating systems. The brood fleet approaches, Lurfreich reported unnecessarily. All of them could sense it through their biological connection to the collective. They must be warned. Ziethaval insisted, his voice distorted by stress. The humans are not what we believed. They are not separable, exploitable components. The thought remained unfinished as Commander Taylor's consciousness once again manifested in their communication systems. This time, however, he appeared physically on the bridge, his form reconstructed from the molecular patterns stored in the ship's disassembler technology. Your brood fleet is preparing for harvesting operations, Taylor stated calmly. They still believe Earth is defenseless. Zothel's appendages contracted in agitation. You must allow us to warn them. What your species has done, what you are capable of. It changes everything. That's the point, Taylor agreed. You came to harvest us like resources. You're about to discover what happens when you mistake a civilization for a commodity. Taylor's form rippled slightly. The molecular reconstruction wasn't perfect, giving him an ethereal quality. We've analyzed your collective consciousness structure. The broodmother coordinates your species through quantum entanglement patterns nearly identical to those we've established with your ship. Understanding dawned in Zivthal's compound eyes. You cannot. The integration protocols are biologically encoded. A foreign consciousness would be rejected. Taylor smiled. Are you certain? Your analysis of human biology was fatally flawed? Perhaps your understanding of your own vulnerabilities is equally incomplete. On the view screen, the brood fleet had changed course, accelerating toward Earth. They sensed something is wrong. Varric observed. The collective is initiating emergency protocols. Too late, Taylor said softly. In the Montana extraction zone, the 100 augmented soldiers maintained their formation, now surrounded by an expanded array of quantum transmitters. The technology was a hybrid, part human innovation, part adapted Kovar system. Above them, the iridescent sphere had transformed, expanding upward into the atmosphere like a pillar of light. Dr. Abrams' voice echoed through their neural links. Quantum amplification at maximum capacity. Prepare for Phase 5 initiation. Commander Taylor's consciousness, split between his reconstructed form on the Kovar ship and his physical body in Montana, expanded further through the quantum network. Through it, he could sense the approaching brood fleet, 7 nodes of a singular consciousness, powerful and ancient. Integration protocols aligned, he reported. Initiating breach. The quantum pillar above Montana pulsed once brilliantly, sending a cascading wave of entangled particles outward through the solar system. The particles moved faster than light, riding the underlying quantum foam of reality itself. They reached the brood fleet in milliseconds, penetrating the vessel's defenses as if they didn't exist. Aboard the lead ship of the brood fleet, Supreme Executor Kasul experienced the first tremors of alarm. The integration protocols were activating prematurely. The scout ship was attempting connection while still in Earth orbit. Irregular, unprecedented, but not immediately threatening. Until the nature of the connection became clear, the quantum signatures were wrong, contaminated, altered. As the integration proceeded, foreign patterns infiltrated the collective consciousness. Not just data, but awareness. Not just information, but perspective. Human consciousness multiplied 100-fold poured into the Kovar collective, like a tsunami. For the first time in their 50,000-year expansion across 3 galactic sectors, The Kovar experienced direct contact with another sentient species' thought patterns, not as subjects to be studied, but as equals. No, as infiltrators breaching the very core of their existence. The brood mother's consciousness, distributed across the fleet, recoiled in shock and began emergency containment procedures. But the human consciousness didn't attack or destroy. It expanded, shared, connected. Images flooded the collective, Earth's oceans teeming with life, human children learning and growing, art and music conveying emotions. The Kovar had no reference for wars and reconciliation, love and sacrifice, the complex web of human relationships that didn't fit any logical pattern the Kovar could comprehend. And beneath it all, a current of righteous fury at the 10 women executed in Montana, not as faceless reproductive units, but as individuals whose lives had been brutally ended. The Kovar experienced human grief, human rage, human determination through the quantum. They felt what it meant to be part of a species that had fought its way up from caves, surviving predators, ice ages, plagues, and its own destructive tendencies, only to emerge stronger each time. Cathazil ordered defensive measures, but the contamination had already spread too far. The quantum entanglement woven by Project Loom had transformed the Kovar's greatest strength, their collective consciousness, into a vulnerability. On Earth, Dr. Abrams watched in astonishment as the quantum network expanded exponentially. "The brood fleet's processing capacity is integrating with our systems," she reported. "Their collective consciousness is attempting to isolate the contamination, but they don't understand. That isolation is a foreign concept to us," Taylor finished, his voice echoing strangely through the command center's speakers. His physical body in Montana remained motionless, but his consciousness now expanded through the entire quantum network, including the brood fleet itself. "They're trying to sever the connection," Taylor continued. "They can't. Their entire civilization is built on the premise of harvesting and integration. They've never needed to defend against being harvested themselves." On the tactical display, the 7 massive vessels of the brood fleet shuddered in unison, their propulsion systems firing erratically as the collective consciousness fragmented under the onslaught of human thought patterns. "What exactly is happening to them?" President Harlow demanded. Dr. Abrams' eyes widened as she interpreted the incoming data. "They're experiencing empathy for the first time. Their civilization evolved without it. They see other species as resources, because they never developed the neural architecture to recognize sentience outside their collective." "And now?" General Westfield asked. "Now they're experiencing the deaths of those 10 women from our perspective," Abrams said quietly. "They're feeling what we felt." The brood fleet's vessels began to drift, their coordinated formation dissolving as the collective consciousness fractured under the weight of human emotion. Within the quantum network, Taylor navigated the alien thought patterns, searching for the core of the collective, the brood mother's primary consciousness. He found it in the central vessel, an immense silicon-based entity, physically connected to the ship's systems. Not merely commanding the vessel, but part of it. The brood mother had never experienced isolation. Individual consciousness was as foreign to her as collective consciousness had been to humans. Until now. Through the quantum link, Taylor addressed her directly. "You came to harvest us. Instead, you've given us the means to understand you completely." The brood mother's response came not in words but in patterns of thought. Confusion, then recognition, then something approaching horror as she comprehended the full implications of what had occurred. Taylor continued. "The 10 women your scout killed in Montana, they weren't just reproductive units. One was developing treatments for genetic diseases. Another was designing sustainable habitat systems that could have benefited your species as well as ours. A third was a musician whose work brought joy to thousands. He projected their complete lives through the quantum link, their achievements, their connections, their potential, all erased in a moment of callous curiosity. We could destroy your fleet now," Taylor stated. "The quantum entanglement gives us control of your propulsion and weapon systems. We could turn your harvesting technology against you, as you did to our people." The broodmother's consciousness contracted in something like fear, an emotion previously unknown to the collective. "But that's not who we are," Taylor concluded. "Your fundamental error wasn't technological. It was philosophical. You assumed that because we exist as individuals, we are weaker than your collective. You never understood that our individuality is what makes our connections to each other meaningful and powerful." Through the quantum link, Taylor transmitted humanity's terms: immediate withdrawal of the brood fleet, reparations for the lives taken, and the establishment of permanent quantum communication channels to ensure peaceful relations. The alternative remained unspoken but clear through the entanglement. Humanity now possessed the knowledge to destroy the Kovar completely, not through superior firepower, but by unraveling the quantum patterns that held their collective consciousness together. 3 weeks later, Commander Taylor stood before the United Nations General Assembly, his augmented systems finally disconnected from the quantum network. The strain had taken its toll. His hair had turned completely white, and doctors weren't certain if the neural damage would be permanent. The Kovar brood fleet has withdrawn beyond the orbit of Neptune, he reported. The quantum communication channels remain stable, allowing for ongoing negotiations. Their understanding of us and ours of them continues to evolve. And the families of those lost in Montana? Asked the Secretary General. The Kovar have provided technologies that will transform our medical capabilities, our energy systems, and our understanding of quantum physics, Taylor replied. It doesn't bring back the dead, but it honors their memory by improving life for all humanity. He paused, gathering his thoughts. What happened wasn't just a first contact scenario gone wrong. It was a fundamental collision between two ways of perceiving reality, collective versus individual consciousness. The Kovar never understood us because they couldn't conceive of meaningful existence outside a hive mind. We never understood them because we couldn't imagine consciousness without individuality. Taylor's gaze swept across the assembly. The quantum integration has changed both our species forever. The Kovar now understand individual consciousness, and we've gained insight into collective awareness without sacrificing our individuality. As he stepped away from the podium, the assembly erupted in questions. Taylor ignored them, making his way slowly toward the exit where Dr. Abrams waited. "Did you tell them about the changes?" she asked quietly. Taylor shook his head. "Not yet. They're not ready to understand what's happening." Abrams nodded, her eyes reflecting the same faint glow as Taylor's, a side effect of prolonged exposure to the quantum network. "How many people does the integration protocol work on?" "Everyone with the genetic markers," Taylor replied. "Approximately 37% of the human population. The broodmother didn't just give us technology, she gave us evolution." They walked in silence through the corridors of the UN building, both aware of the subtle quantum resonance that now connected them to millions of others across the planet. Humans whose neural patterns had spontaneously adapted during the confrontation with the Kovar, developing the capacity for a new kind of consciousness. Not a hive mind like the Kovar, but something uniquely human, individual awareness existing alongside collective connection. Was it intentional? Abrams asked. Did she know what would happen when she agreed to the quantum communication protocols? Taylor smiled faintly. "The brood mother is 50,000 years old, Dr. Abrams. She's been guiding her species' evolution since before humans built the first cities. She understood exactly what she was doing. But why? After what we did to her fleet." "Because we showed mercy when we could have destroyed them," Taylor said simply. "And because she realized something profound about our species." Outside the UN building they paused, looking up at the sky, where the faintest shimmer of quantum resonance was visible to their enhanced perception. The communication channels, linking Earth to the retreating brood fleet. The Kovar expanded across 3 galactic sectors because they believed collective consciousness was the pinnacle of evolution, Taylor continued. "We showed them something they had never encountered, individual minds capable of genuine connection without sacrificing identity. It terrified them, then fascinated them." "So this is what? A gift? An experiment?" Abrams pressed. Taylor watched as a young woman passed by them on the street, pausing momentarily with a look of confusion as she sensed the quantum resonance for the first time, another human whose neural patterns were adapting to the new reality. "Neither," he replied. "It's an invitation. The galaxy is larger and stranger than either of our species imagined. The broodmother believes we might navigate it better together than either of us could alone." As the sun set over New York, casting long shadows across the city, Taylor felt the quantum network pulsing gently in his consciousness, thousands of minds gradually becoming aware of one another, learning to balance individual thought with collective awareness. Not erasing differences, but celebrating them, creating something entirely new in the process. They executed 10 women, believing they were harvesting mere biological units. Taylor said softly, "Instead, they awakened something that had been dormant in humanity since we first looked up at the stars and wondered if we were alone." Dr. Abrams nodded. "What do we tell people when they start experiencing the changes?" Taylor watched as lights began to appear across the city, millions of individual sources combining to illuminate the darkness, separate yet unified in purpose. We tell them the truth, he said, that the universe isn't divided between the individual and the collective. The greatest power comes when you can be both, when you understand that every mind contains multitudes and every multitude is made of minds. Above them, barely visible against the darkening sky, the quantum communication channels pulsed with activity as humanity took its first tentative steps into a larger understanding, not just of alien consciousness, but of its own untapped potential. They executed 10 women, believing it was an act of mercy, Taylor said, his voice barely audible. In the end, it was we who showed mercy, and in doing so taught an ancient species something they had forgotten across 50 millennia of expansion. The quantum resonance rippled outward from Earth, carrying a message that would echo across the galaxy for centuries to come. True power isn't measured by what you can take from others, but by what you choose not to take when you have the chance.